Hello and welcome to another perspective drawing lesson. If you've been watching the previous films, you'll know by now that 1 point, 2 point and 3 point perspective are just arbitrary drawing conventions where we decide on how many of our axes are going to be affected by vanishing points. So in 1 point, only one of our axes is affected by a vanishing point, and in 2 point, which is what we're doing this week, two of our axes are going to go off to vanishing points, and the third one, the vertical one, is always going to be vertical. So whatever happens, this vertical will never go to a vanishing point. So let's have a look at some examples. So let's imagine we're out in the desert sketching, and we're going to sketch this old building. So the first thing to do would be to look for our eye line and horizon. That would be the only thing in the picture that's horizontal. So let's have a look. There it is. So it runs nicely along the bottom of the windowsills. And if this was a completely flat desert, we'd see the sky meeting the ground at that point too. But we've got mountains in the background. Everything above that line goes off has a lean to it, goes off to a vanishing point over here, over on the left. And below it tilts the other way. And over on this side, we've got them tilting like this, going off to a vanishing point off this side. And as usually happens when you're sketching, in a small sketchbook especially, your vanishing points don't fit in the picture. Sometimes they do, sometimes more often than not they don't. So we need some way of working out what these angles are, and we do that with a combination of measuring and by just having a guess. So I'm doing it by eye if we're sketching, if we're not doing a technical drawing. So I'll put a few more lines in. So here I've put some more lines in. So we could do this. We could hold our pen up to the subject, angle the pen till it meets the subject's angle and matches it, then bring it down to our page and transfer it that way. That's one way of roughly getting there. You could also measure things like the height of this front corner and compare it to the height of the back corner. And then by having those two measurements, you'd know how much smaller things need to be when they're down this end than they are at this end. And again, to get that length, this distance here, you could measure how many times this side fits into the front, things like that. So once you've done a bit of careful measuring and some by eye work, if that's the thing, you should get fairly close to a perspective grid that you can work within, and then you can drop in your other windows, the rows of stones that follow roughly horizontals, the rows of tiles, all of those things. They will all go off to the same vanishing point which sits on this horizon. And the only thing to make sure is that you haven't got suddenly maybe this top of the door frame tilted too much and going off to its own vanishing point somewhere different from the vanishing point that everything else is going to. You just need to make sure that everything's radiating nicely from those points. If you're making the picture up rather than drawing from life, you can choose how close or how far away from the subject your vanishing points are. And if you bring them closer together, closer to the subject, you'll notice you'll get much more dramatic perspective. And if you take them further away, the perspective, the distortion will be much less. So let's have a look at another example. Let's hide this one and look at this example here. So here we've got another building on a beach, Derek Jarman's house. And this one was taken from further away and with a longer lens. So there's very little distortion going on. You can see these lines do taper, but very, very subtly. So the vanishing points are very, very far off our picture. And if I find, there's our horizon running nicely through the same place on both windows, and it matches perfectly the horizon in the distance there where the sky meets the land. And here we are. There's the building sketched in. And on this one, I extended the picture so that we could see where the vanishing points are. And you can see just how far away they are from our subject. So with our lines have so little taper on them that it almost looks like an isometric drawing or something. And what's interesting is I overlaid the first sketch and aligned the horizon and vanishing points for that one too. So I put the vanishing points in the same place for both, and the horizon same for both. And you can see they look like they're in the same environment now, but you can also see how much more dramatic the perspective is on that foreground house than the one on the background. And I added one further house, a made-up one, right in the foreground that's very, very distorted. So this one's much bigger, it's much closer to us, but you can see how much more dramatic that perspective gets. And I've added this circle here running right through the vanishing points. And that's sort of an indication of the safe area to work in when you're drawing two-point perspective pictures. It's sort of safe to work inside this circle. And as you get close to it, the edges there, you're going to start getting very exaggerated distortion. And you certainly don't want to go beyond it. If your building was to go beyond this vanishing point, you really should be doing a single vanishing point picture rather than a two-point, or a cylindrical one maybe. So you want to stay safely within there, or at least within the circle, so you can get close, but just don't go too far. Hope that helps. See you in the next one for 3-point perspective.